You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
The California New Car Dealers Association, also known as the CNCDA, recently released its first quarterly 2024 California Auto Outlook report. So on today's show, we are diving into the report and the state of the industry in California. We're pleased to welcome back Brian Maas. You've seen him here before on CBT News. He's the president of the California New Car Dealers Association. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule there, running the association. I might add, the biggest association, I would imagine, right, in the country for dealers.
Yeah, in terms of state dealer associations, we're the biggest. And Jim, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Sure. So you must be a busy man these days with all that's going on out there. So talk to us about the California Auto Outlook report.
So as usual, the report has 8 pages of a pretty deep dive into the data about vehicle registrations in California during the first quarter. Mm-hmm. And a couple of things stand out. One, the market continues to improve in California, although not quite the pace that it was improving, say, a year ago. So we're expecting to hit 1.8 million new vehicles sold in California, which is just a hair below where we were pre-COVID.
Wow.
The other big story is Tesla's market share declined for the first time in memory.
Yeah, that is big news.
And there's a lot of data in the report that indicates, how that's happening, and we can speculate as to why.
Sure. What? Well, let's jump right in. Why do you think that is? Why is that the situation?
I think there are a number of factors. One is that the OEMs that our franchise dealers represent mm-hmm. have a lot more competitive product in 2024 than they had.
That's for sure.
Even a year or two ago.
Right.
So, and that's true across all product categories, from the F-150 Lightning to the Cadillac Lyriq, and the list goes on and on. Yeah. And I think that allows consumers to make a choice. Tesla's product, candidly, is a little stale. Mm-hmm. They haven't really refreshed their Model Y or their Model 3 in several years. You have Mr. Musk's controversy in the media about owning X and moving his headquarters from California to Austin, and making political pronouncements that, again, 5 years ago, he didn't do those things.
Right.
And now I think you have some California buyers wondering, gee, do I really want to buy this vehicle? So you combine all those factors, and I think that's been a challenge for Tesla in California.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. I think maybe the shine has worn off a little bit with those buyers. And to your point, for those buyers and those drivers of Teslas not to be able to move up in the brand to bigger SUVs or maybe pickup trucks, although they came out with the truck, but that's not exactly what most people want to drive around town as a pickup truck to go to and from Home Depot or what have you. So there's really no place for those people, those drivers to go, right? That's a problem.
Yeah, and if you think of the traditional OEMs that we're all familiar with and our dealers represent, as you suggest, many of them start with passenger sedans all the way up to luxury vehicles or large pickup trucks. And of course, many of them even go in medium or heavy duty. So the fact that Tesla's really only got 2 or 3 models, I guess 4 you could buy, that's not a whole lot of choice.
Yeah.
And, it reminds the old Henry Ford line, you can have a Model T in any color you want as long as it's black. And I think the challenge for Tesla is they're not providing the variety that consumers expect.
That's right. And it seems as though, Toyota was under a lot of pressure a few years ago because it seemed as though they were not, building enough EVs. And some of the other car companies and people in the industry are like, what's going on with Toyota? How come you're not coming along here? And at that time, they said, we're going to take a little more of a wait and see. We don't think the consumers are there yet. Seems like they got it. They called it right on this, right? I mean, They want to. They're saying, hey, people want to. We're going to use these plug-in hybrids and hybrids to bridge that until we get to more of an EV environment, right?
Well, we've talked before on the show, and I've talked to other media folks as well. It's a big transition for a customer to go from an ICE vehicle to a fully electric vehicle.
It is.
You have to worry about where you're going to fuel the vehicle, where you're going to charge it.
Yeah.
Does the charger work? We've seen the stories about the charging network isn't all that reliable.
Right.
But there's a gas station on every corner.
That's right.
And it's got a dozen pumps, and at least one of them is going to work.
Yeah.
So that anxiety about making the switch and thinking about the reliability is something that we as a society have to overcome if we're ultimately going to get to a place where the vehicle fleet's electrified.
That's right. I just saw a report recently that said that out of the $7.5 billion that President Biden allocated to the charging stations nationwide, some 500,000 I think he was planning on, only 7 have actually been installed so far. So, and now we're coming up on the end of his presidency, and right now, if the election was held today, not to get too political, but I just saw this morning, the polls have President or former President Trump winning again, and which is amazing. But how does that change things if we're looking at a Trump presidency again with regard to EVs?
Well, I think he's made a lot of public statements that indicate that he's not a fan of moving quickly in that direction.
Yeah.
I think the interesting challenge is because in California, we have the Air Resources Board, and they have the authority under the Clean Air Act and court cases to develop their own vehicle emission standards, which include the regulation of greenhouse gases. We're going to have our own EV standards, and a number of states are going to follow California's lead, irrespective of what happens with EPA. So I think we may be in a circumstance where the one thing that the OEMs don't want may actually happen, where you have some states that are following California's lead,
right,
and you have some states that are following the federal government's lead. And if President Trump's elected again and they slow that down, you're going to have sort of two standards competing with each other.
Right, right. Switching gears once again, you were one of the signees, I guess you could say, to the signers to a letter, I should say an open ad, kind of a letter to in Automotive News to Volkswagen, referring to their Scout program, and also Honda referring to their Sony partnership. It looks as though those companies really haven't come out and said we're going to be selling these vehicles through a franchise dealer network, and you're kind of calling them out in this letter to say, hey, let's talk about this. What are your intentions? I mean, what's interesting to me is that in both of these cases, Volkswagen and Honda, it was franchise dealers that had these companies be so successful here in the U.S., and now they're kind of doing a little bit of a Heisman on dealers, saying, well, not so fast. We might sell directly to consumers with the Scout product and our partnership with Sony. So talk to us about that. Where does that stand? What's your take on that?
I think the association executives that represent the state and metro associations across the country, we wanted to send a public message to these companies that they should use their business partners, the franchise dealers, in the retail sale of vehicles. And we purchased the ad in Auto News. All 50 state leaders signed it. We had a franchise bill. I think we talked about this before on this show last year that made it very clear that VW or Honda have to use their franchise dealers when retailing vehicles.
Yeah.
So we'd argue it's probably illegal in California if you've got franchisees to go outside the franchise dealer network if you're using an affiliated company. So, the fact that some OEMs have been very public about their commitment to franchise dealers, and Honda and VW, at least in these cases, are being more circumspect, is concerning. And so on behalf of our members, we want to send the message that you should use your business partners. They're the ones that made you successful, as you said a moment ago, and they can continue to make you successful in the years to come.
Yeah, no question about it. Brian Maas, president of the California New Car Dealers Association, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Good seeing you.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.